Project Zomboid is a game I absolutely love. I play it with my mates every now and then to goof off and do something stupid, whether it be drunk driving without telling him or just getting the zombie girl skin for that smaller hitbox. However, the game has a ton of problems and video essays on the game swipe under the rug. Throughout this video, I'll bring to light deep problems that the game possesses that people skim over. To not be too negative, I'll explain one pro of the game and then a con, just so you know to balance out the scales, because every game has its highlight reel and P-draw. And now I haven't even told you at this point what the game even is about. What even is a Zomboid? Project Zomboid is an isometric zombie survival game made by Indie Stone, known for its realistic mechanics and permadeath difficulty. For the past 11 years, they've been working on the game to further strengthen itself as the zombie game. Now let's start off with what the game does to quick my boots. Its atmosphere. The background music of the game is phenomenal. It's rather subtle because that's what background music means, but it knows when to amp it up. Oh god. You feel the rhythm just get faster and faster when their numbers start to pile up, as you try to put together a plan to lose the trail. Or not. For the first few hours of the game, I barely even had the courage to leave the starting house, simply because of how the game presented itself. I'd basically quarantine for a whole day and somehow die. The way the game was able to portray this sense of eerie loneliness is crazy. The game feels like you're walking through the middle of a night while everyone is asleep on your way to get a midnight snack. Strangely enough, zombie games aren't really known to display this realistic sense of loneliness. Most iterations of the formula resort to the fast-paced action of the apocalyptic scenario. It's nice to see them return to the immortal snail type of threat to the survivors, such as during the movie The Night of the Living Dead. However, sometimes I feel like it's a bit too much. Con 1. Inconsistent theme/message. The game's first impression to the player is the tutorial. It has this weird attempts at humor where you'll just joke about the death of your family members as you loot them for supplies. It just felt so repetitive and condescending. Every time you open the game, you're greeted with this nihilistic loading screen, telling you that you will die. While yeah, it's definitely true, the tone of this is what I'd say completely different from the rest of the game. Project Zomboid is what I would call a sandbox roguelike. Technically more like a Dark Souls Minecraft, but there hasn't really been a term developed for that just yet. Oh yeah, the big problem. Wrong first impression. The game is a sandbox where you can do whatever you want. Drunk driving, killing zombies, meditating, and drunk driving. Oh, did I mention drunk driving? The game feels very campy to me, like a game of Minecraft, once surpassed the spooky wookie stuff. Very different from what the game presents itself as. A media about death and suffering, when it's a do-whatever sandbox. I know this is a bit nitpicky, and it is, but it's very harmful to set the wrong expectations, especially for new players. Also, it's just a very badly written tutorial, except for the ending. All tutorials should end like that, honestly. The game's message, however, coincides with its older iterations, but the game has changed tremendously over the past 11 years to the point where it's something else entirely, but at the same time, better and more refined. You can really see it in the amount of features it has. Pro 2. Mechanical depth. Now this is what really got my eyes on this. I'm nearing 3-digit hours on it and I haven't even touched the baking mechanic until I recorded clips for this video. The game makes you account for multiple things with in-depth systems like foraging mechanics, zombie migration cycles, character skills, moodles, and many more. The game gives you so many options to survive in any way you want, along with fighting with any weapon you want, eat anything you want, and most importantly, drive whenever you want. Of course, you can just avoid all these options and just scavenge every day too. Deep expanse of the game's mechanics keeps you and old players alike immersed in whatever they're doing in a sandbox game. This isn't just about the slow and creeping of the zomboids. Sure, it's a zombie game, but you'll find yourself sooner or later doing other stuff, like going on road trips, building a cake, collecting DVD tapes, or whatever feels cozy in a zombie apocalypse. What about the combat though in a zombie game? It's complete dog water. Con 2. Combat jank. Combat is rather inconsistent. You'd hear a bite SFX, check your character, no bite. There are also instances where they attack from a completely safe distance. People would 100% die on the hill that this game's consistent, and that you'd get used to it. Bro, I've been here for like 80 hours. If it takes more than 80 hours to get used to it, that's kinda a problem. Like even if the game is 100% consistent, which most people say it is, it's still unpredictable and very hard to read visually. Which I don't know, may be important to a permadeath game? If you watch any combat guide, they'll tell you these two things. 1. Avoid it, and 2. Fight the horde one by one. Don't get me wrong, that's great advice for the game, but it highlights one of the massive problems of it. The game incentivizes you to avoid combat because it requires you to play with little room for error or get lucky, and fighting horde in smaller sizes, which I don't know, isn't that much of a riveting gameplay, both melee and ranged. If you don't account for the excellent combat mods, of course. Even if you do, let's say, use guns to do it at a ranged distance, it's a complete slog. People act like guns are one of the most dangerous weapons to use, when you can just kill them easily if you just have enough ammo. If you do, let's say, attract a horde, you can simply just enter a house and get out the back door to escape. Granted, the first few doors are going to be locked, but you'd find an open one in like 5 minutes or less. I have no problem with the game being less combat oriented, but even then, how do you get around the map at all? How are you gonna break into houses if the zombie blocking the window is too much of a risk to engage combat with? Speaking of houses, if you go around any town, you realize how much detail went into the map design and layout. Pro tree, well-designed map of course. While I definitely haven't explored most of the map just yet, you can go to any commercial area of a town and see how much tidbits of lore and references they added. Parodies of shop names, salons, clothing stores, bakeries, just a lot honestly. Even if some of these stores don't really sell much useful stuff like furniture, you could see how someone would be able to live in town pre-apocalypse, before hell arrived, you know? It gives you that weird light feel that it is a small town that was ruined by Zomboids. Again, it's part of the immersion that Project Zomboid encapsulates its players in. Whenever you go to different towns, you see how Riverside is completely different to, let's say, Rosewood. I feel like Rosewood has a slightly darker palette in their buildings by the use of more bricks. Riverside's buildings are made of more wood painted white, so it fits with the river that I haven't approached yet, even though this is like the town I spawned the second most to. Anyway, the zombie population, whatever system they added to make cities feel cramped when they needed to, is amazing. When my friends and I wasted Louisville, it was a very nerve-wracking experience seeing the amount of zombies starting to group near the border as we approach it. It gave us that eerie dread that we might just have a bit more than we can chew. But there's one problem with the map. It's completely empty. Con 3. No exploration incentive. It's a large yet shallow pool. There's no reason to explore 99% of buildings. Most towns are like 40% bland houses. Like sure, there's probably accurate to real towns, but it gets monotonous exploring them again and again and again. So even if the town is somewhat big, there's only like 20 places you have to loot to get the stuff you need. Like sure, talk about how these empty buildings help with world building and all, but the game also gave us little structures that are actually worth driving or walking to. Speaking of places worth going to, the game's those tables are also kinda screwed too, because for some reason, 80% of cars don't have gas and 90% don't have keys. For some reason, every other house has a gun, but never a sledgehammer, like ever. In my 80 hours of playing this game, I have never seen a sledgehammer on God. I just break the doors through a crowbar at this point. This doesn't just happen for a few items, it happens for about a dozen items you need to progress, like the generator magazine, the herbalist magazine, car manuals, trap manuals, and fishing manuals. It's a bit too much. The game incentivizes you to go aimlessly around the map looking for them in hopes you can find them in 5 or fewer pit stops. From a game about survival, it becomes a fetch quest to look for those items in particular. Sometimes there isn't that much variety in the loot to go from too. Why go to a convenience store when there's a fruit market closer? You can avoid most of the buildings in the game this way. I wish there were these somewhat more novelty items in the game, like the spiffy brand plushies or the weird ski mask in survivor houses. These novelty items are 100% the charm that the game brings that no zombie game has done before. They aren't hard to get or rare by any means, nor do they serve any function, except for one thing: roleplay. Pro 4. Roleplay experience. I absolutely love these items. I 100% recommend collecting them if you have the extra space or want to throw out well-needed supplies just to bring a billiard table. It makes you feel like you're actually in the apocalypse, trying to have a little fun even if that is just around the corner. The game also supplements you with a ton of character creation options. It reminds me of how D&D allows you to build a character, to be honest. It allows you to choose what job your character had during its pre-apocalypse life, along with skills and the flaws that he had. The system for this is the second thing that got me interested in it. A good trait is worth about, let's say, X amount of points. You need to balance it out with a negative or multiple negative rates that amount to that points too. So it very much leads to interesting gameplay where you have a pushover and know-it-all who can make a pipe bomb that can carry at most 4 water bottles. It's interesting to play around for challenge runs. Another thing is that it leads to a group of players specializing in different things, having someone as the mechanic, the team's healer, or the guy who can drive really fast for some reason. That's for that weird co-op campaign vibe that the game is striving for. Now there's one problem with their trade system. It's completely unbalanced. Con 4. Non-optimal choices. There are some negative traits like, let's say, slow healer and short-sighted, where the gameplay effect is 100% negligible. I can play 50 hours with and without short-sighted, and in zero parallel universes can I tell you the difference. Due to this, everyone brings these exact traits, because as I said, they do literally nothing but give free points. Some of these traits are just straight up just run ruiners too. Take Deep for example. It's completely baloney of a trait to bring, since Kinetics removes your ability to see a few meters behind you and hear audio cues that the game requires you to hear to live. In the positive trait section, there are ones you most of the time bring, but these are ones that are a little bit harder to explain. You see, in Project Zomboid, you can train your stats in this game, whether it be mechanics, cooking, metalwork, fishing, all that stuff. It includes, of course, strength and fitness. Now these are a complete slog to train. Anything past level 6 and you need to grind in-game years and real-life months for. However, you can simply max it out on the character creation before beforehand and never have to worry about it. Because of this, it's objectively better to just max out strength and all that stuff before you even play the game. Sometimes traits straight up aren't just worth it. Like, why would you take the cooking profession at all over something that provides you with something more useful like weapon levels? Of course, you can always go off meta, but most of the time, if you choose anything that isn't the must-have traits, you're left with something that's closer to not going through the character creation at all. Of course, in multiplayer, this isn't exactly the case, since if you play in a group, each person just take one of these meta traits in a way that everyone isn't just playing the same character. But in single player, it's not gonna be clear-cut what exact build you're going to run with. It becomes more of a difficulty slider than a way to diversify how you play the game. Now, these things that I mentioned are mostly going to get fixed by build 42 or mods. But even then, I don't think a game should be free from its criticism just because some legendary planned update is going to fix it, or some hobbies will. Especially if it's the zombie game, next to COD Zombies or something. I just feel that this needs to be said. It's as if every video essayist will praise this game for its slow horror and in-depth mechanics. While yeah, it's true, it gives off an impression less than the truth when you ignore a game's flaws. That someone who might buy the game might consider that as a deal breaker. With that said, I might do a follow-up video to support the channel by subscribing or doing anything that drives engagement. But regardless, thank you for reaching this far into the video. It means a lot for me for someone to sit down and listen to what I say, even if it's just ramblings of a game. With that said, see you.